Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name's Candace Marie. Happy Friday. I am excited to be back with you guys today live on the channel, and we're going to be doing live readings on this up and coming full moon in Aquarius. Wowzers, this is going to be quite the full moon, guys. So I'm excited to be answering your guys' questions in real time. First of all, if you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up and drop me a hello in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. Make sure you're subscribed, hit that bell button below so you can see more of my videos. I'm always here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Sundays. And today is July 24th, 2026. This is the last Friday, I think, that we're going to be doing readings on the channel, if I am correct. So if you are a level 4 member and you want to get in and get your reading for the month, I highly recommend you do. Next week, we're going to be back with tarot. So if you guys are watching this on Saturday or on Sunday, I'm no longer live. I missed you, but I hope to catch you guys next week. And we've already got a laundry list of people who are here, so I'm just going to tell you guys right now, we have already closed the members. We've already closed the reading, so the queue is closed. I saw you, DJ Mars, so I saw you signed up for your memberships. That's fine. Send your birth information in the chat and let me know your specific question. And we need your time, date of birth, location, and we can get you in for this month. And then if you stay a member, you can continue to come back next month and you can get tarot if you want. So send me that info. All right. Let me let you guys know. Can see you. Hello. Hey, what's up, Des? Let me say hi to everybody first of all. So we've got Luna here. What's up, Emmy? You're back. Thanks for the super chat. Diana's here. We've also got A Flower 33. Nice to see you. And DJ Mar joined. We've got Confession Soul Salon, probably Stacy. Stacy, I got your info, don't worry. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys. Basically how this is gonna work is you're gonna see me pull up your guys' charts. I already have them kind of input in my software. I'm gonna be going in the order that I receive the readings, and sometimes this can take a bit. So if you guys are not able to stay the whole time, you can always come back and you guys just look for your name on the top corner where you see the chart, and the reading will live here on YouTube forever. So you can come back and leave me comments and let me know how your reading plays out for you. For those of you guys who are interested in learning tarot astrology, if you want to learn my predictive techniques, click in the links below, head over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. Check out my Astro 301. That's my new advanced prediction kind of method course. We also have a beginner's 101 course, a transit and predictive method course 201. So we have a bundle now. And we've also got transit calendars, so much cool stuff there. And you guys can check out my personal sessions if you guys want to book a one-on-one reading with me. All of that and more at beyondtheveiltarot.com. Okay, Des, I've got your info, don't worry. And this is who I have. So if you guys hear your name, you're in the queue, you made the cut. That's going to be Grace, which, by the way, Grace, we need your birth information. If you can send that in the chart, please, in the chat. We've got level 4 people, Luna, Diana, Des, and DJ, if you want to get in there. And then also we've got Emmy for super chat. And then in the queue, we've got Grace, Emily, Mandy, April, Jacqueline, Nicole, Abigail, Stacy, and Vane. Okay? All right. So you've got some time, DJ. Just let me know. And we are going to be starting first with Luna, and then Diana, and then we'll get Des. We always take our level 4 memberships first. If you guys are not already a member on my YouTube channel, definitely check it out. There's several different levels, but level 4 is going to get you a reading with me once a month. You can skip the line. We take the level member for people first. You guys also get my daily horoscope for the 12 rising signs. You're going to get shout outs from me on the channel, and you support me as a full-time content creator, putting out all kinds of content on YouTube. We do new and full moon reports, stuff for the eclipses, really long, videos on retrogrades, and also on the horoscopes for the month. So hopefully you guys like the content that's being put out there. And we're gonna start first with Miss Luna. So let me scroll up to the chat and see what you were talking to me about. Luna's March 17th, 1992. So she's Cancer rising, and she's got her sun in Pisces and her moon is in Virgo. All right, so she says, hey, can I get my reading? Any advice on what this full moon would bring? My brother is in the psych ward. Sorry to hear that. This happened before in 2014. Lots of apartment issues as well, just lots of stress and worry. Work is so busy, and that's what's keeping me grounded. I'm a bit overwhelmed and trying to be positive that things will get better. All right. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your brother. Obviously, that can be just in a nutshell. I think you're starting to pick up on some of the stuff that's coming with the eclipses, which does not surprise me. I think if you guys think about what's happening with this full moon, that's going to be happening in Aquarius. So let's pull that up. This full moon was actually seated 6 months ago under a solar eclipse in Aquarius. So that's why this feels almost like it's intense like an eclipse. And this is going to be a full moon that's going to feel bigger because it's going to be opposing Jupiter, and it's going to have the moon in conjunction to Pluto. So it's just like all the stuff that's going on. It is also the last lunar transit that we're going to have before we get into August, where we're going to have a solar eclipse that's going to be in Leo, and then we're going to have a lunar eclipse that's going to be in Pisces. So I think you're picking up on some of that stuff. I mean, it's nice to hear that you're trying to stay positive and optimistic, but obviously the full moon is hitting the axis of your chart that is connected to your stability and your resources. So it's connected to your second house and your 8th house. The sun is going to be connected to your siblings. And if you notice, just recently, the south node's been kind of swinging through your moon. So that can be impacting the emotional state and things connected to your siblings. Anyway, the full moon is the gateway to that. And I noticed that your Chiron is at a 3, and that's a degree that deals with siblings. And the full moon is going to be conjunct Pluto, and obviously you're the moon, where you're kind of feeling like there's some heavy emotions going on revolving around, you know, change or security or resources. A full moon in the 8th house can definitely shake out anything revolving around psychological matters or things that are kind of connected to security. So that hitting that angle and opposing your Chiron is, I think, why there's some stuff that's coming up where you're a little anxious. There's some wounding coming up around siblings and how you communicate with them. And then obviously work is going to be kind of ruled by both Pluto as well as Mars. So the full moon conjunct Pluto is highlighting where you're just like, my work schedule is insane. I've got a lot going on. Honestly, it's looking really good in the financial department. I mean, even with everything else that's kind of, you know, happening around you. And a lot of this is about you really thinking, I think, in the long term, you know, what does financial security look like to you? Maybe the eclipse that's coming in, you know, next month is going to be highlighting where you're making more money, or there's going to be more confidence, or there's going to be even more financial stability. And this full moon is kind of saying to you, okay, you know, prior to that happening, what do I do with those resources? You know, am I saving? Am I investing? And obviously it's going to be really bringing up, I think, with some of the kind of connections to Uranus, where there's going to be some unexpected shakeups happening with, well, Gemini siblings. So like literally all the things that you kind of mentioned are definitely happening. My advice is to better navigate this moon is we want to find places where you're going to have sextiles or you're going to have trines. So this full moon in Aquarius in your 8th is going to be sextiling Neptune retrograde. It's also slightly sextiling Saturn. So when you say like work is what's kind of keeping me stable and keeping me going, I completely agree with you. I think the other way to look at this is the trines to Uranus can mean that even though it's difficult or painful or scary to have a significant change with a sibling or even some space because of the opposition, it's positive due to the trine to Uranus, which means that that person's likely going to be getting the, you know, psychological support that they need, even if they're going to be in like a 12th house kind of healing center. And it looks like this Uranus square to your moon, which is basically going to be really emphasized over the next month, especially with the eclipses, is where you're just kind of anxious and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, what's going on with him, he's away, you know. And I would say breathwork exercises, journaling can be really helpful in the 12th house, praying for him, you know, trying to be there to kind of support him emotionally or kind of psychologically, phone calls, text messages, or if those things are kind of allowed, and communication that's going to be at a distance so you can keep your grounding with what's kind of going on in your professional life. But next month, okay, especially the Pisces eclipse, you're going to notice connecting to your kind of 9th, 10th house is going to be opposing your moon. And I think that's where you're going to be like, okay, you know, is there something going on that is highlighting for me where I'm having to show up at work, but, you know, my mom, my sister, my sibling potentially needs me. And I would be really trying to lay all the groundwork now for, you know, really trying to lock into what positive things are happening with your work, so you're not feeling like you're getting like kind of rocked from your center, basically, as you're getting into August of next month. You'll see also shortly right after the full moon, that moon's going to be coming into conjunction with Saturn and Mars. So that's really highlighting where your professional relationships are changing and transforming, and like there's much more motivation and commitment and dedication to like manage something, or to, you know, be front and center, or to kind of be seen at work. And yes, there's some psychological pressure there. So if something comes up around, you know, the time of the full moon, and you feel like, hey, you know, I need to talk to a therapist, or I need to be connecting with a healer, the kind of psychological purge and changes that are going to happen in your 8th house, I think, is, even though they feel destabilizing, I think that it's going to be good with a trine to Uranus, because it's going to bring you some kind of peace, where you're going to be releasing some kind of pent up energy. And I think maybe it's going to be about moving your body, because you've got Mars and Saturn in the 8th house. I also think it can be that you're doing some movement, or you're doing some walking, or you're doing some journaling, anything air related to kind of release up all of that like kind of pent up tension. But it's going to be next month that things are actually going to be, I think, a little bit more dynamic, especially looking at the lunar eclipse in Pisces in August. Okay. Sorry to hear that your brother's going through that, but work is definitely going to be killing it. And the key here is to just stay on top, so that way if there is some bigger changes with family next month, you're not kind of getting rocked, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you, Luna. Definitely let me know what happens. All right, next on my list, we've got Diana. What's up, Diana? Let me pull you up here. There we go. Diana, I have you January 10th, 85, 12:33 a.m. in Los Angeles. If you want to confirm that that's right for me, I had that on file because I did not see that info in the chat. What's up, girl? Okay, cool, perfect. All right, so she says, let's take a look. Cashing in, what does this lunar node change mean for me as a 25-degree Libra rising? I know you went over the nodal shift before, but in my case, it's different being a late degree Libra rising. I have a tendency to read both Libra and Scorpio placements in your readings. Often find myself at odds because my chart is not Mars, but Venus. Any insights would be helpful. Thanks for all that you do. All right, cool. Let's do it. Basically, the nodal shift is going to fall more under the perspective of the Scorpio rising horoscope, okay? You may see some of the themes that are going to come from Libra, but like for the most part, if you think about the last year and a half, the South Node has been going through your Placidus 11th house. So that's kind of represented a breaking away from what other people expect from you, right? Friends in Virgo could mean what is not healthy in friendships, in working relationships, where there has been a pretty distinct change or transformation or letting go of old goals. And that could be socially, that could be tied to, you know, your wellness goals, your professional goals. All of that stuff has been kind of coming up. So the South Node is now officially in your 10th house. So you could start reading the predictions, you know, for Scorpio rising, and it's definitely going to track already. And what this tells me as the South Node is going through your 10th house is that basically there's going to be a shift revolving around the way that you look at your 10th house themes. Your career, your status, your purpose, anything connected to your occupation, your reputation. And as I've said for Scorpio risings, you know, it's going to be a very interesting year because you're going to have the South Node going through there where sometimes your career is kind of on autopilot. Sometimes there is changes or shakeups going on, you know, with like superiors or bosses, or if you have your own business or you own your own business, you may not feel like you want to be running it. And it can also just mean like you feel like you're willing to release or let something go that's outdated about your, you know, kind of professional life. While the North Node is now going to be moving into your 4th house, which is going to be about your home, your family, your roots, your living situation. But the North Node is going to be in Aquarius. So Aquarius is like unconventional living situations where you're thinking differently about your future, where you want to be long-term, And Pluto is already there, and it's been there for a couple of years now, so you're no stranger to this energy. And when the South Node is in Leo, it means that like the ego is detaching from, oh, I am what I do for a living, right? Does that kind of make sense? And maybe this is going to be a little bit more challenging for you for a number of ways, because for starters, you have Leo and you have Aquarius intercepted in your natal 4th and 10th house. So when you're using the Placidus housing system, which, I mean, even though it's messy, that's why I love it. Like, so is life. Like, life's not perfect. It can be a little tricky when you're dealing with interceptions. So to cover that, basically you have to look at the houses that are experiencing the interceptions, which is the 4th of home and family, the 10th of career, work and reputation and superiors. Off the bat, it tells me that there are some blind spots that you have about this work-life, kind of balance. That also means that it's going to take on the themes of these particular signs. So it means that there could be some weird, wacky, unconventional, unexpected changes with home or like emotional shifts, and that there is some kind of unseen talent, creative energy, or something that is kind of like maybe hidden in a way when it comes to your professional world. That also tells me there should be something very interesting or unusual about your natal sun, which rules, your 10th house, which is conjunct Jupiter. Perfect. And then also there should be something unusual either about your Saturn or your Uranus. Okay. So you've got South Node Saturn and you've also got Uranus in the 2nd. My thoughts on this are, you're going to want to watch the solar eclipse that's going to be coming up, because that's going to be the very first marker that's going to be tied to the 10th house storyline of what you're removing and you're releasing, versus the solar eclipse that we had in February of this year, which was kind of showing you what was coming in terms of like, changes with your home and your family. If you remember back in February when we had that first eclipse, that was in a square to Uranus in Taurus. And that was it looked like it was in your 8th house. So probably there was like a lot of tension revolving around, okay, something needs to change, or something's happening on the home front, or, maybe there's about to be some kind of shift with family. And the square to Uranus on your North Node really kind of implied it was going to be like a big emotional shift, maybe a big ending and a big beginning, or a lot of the changes on the home front really were going to be dependent on other people's money, loans, mortgages, things that were connected to inheritances, all of that stuff. So now when you get to next month and we have like the solar eclipse, this is going to be the first eclipse that we're going to have as a part of the South Node storyline. Honestly, the best eclipse all year, I think. Like, all the other eclipses, in my professional opinion, are like trash. Like, I don't think they're very good. I have not liked some of the aspects that I've seen to previous eclipses, and I'm not a fan of the Pisces eclipse at the end of the month either. But this is kind of like, it's a bit paradoxical, because the South Node represents what we release, and then the solar eclipse is something new. And it's at a Scorpio degree. So this literally means that we have to release something in order to embrace something new that's going to come in. And I think it's going to be a new identity. Positive is that you see it conjunct Jupiter. So like, it will be good for making public statements, or something that's about communication, or maybe travel. Maybe there can be some new job opportunity, or something that's going to be like more remote through your 3rd house. And also this is going to be trining Saturn. And if you listen to the Scorpio rising horoscopes, you guys have been kind of getting your butts kicked with Saturn and Neptune going through your 6th house, where just work has been a grind, pretty much for like the last year. Finally, things start to open up and you start to see that, success can come more easily now under this solar eclipse. The other reason why I think this nodal change is going to be difficult for you is you're coming into what you call your nodal square. So if you see your natal South Node is in Scorpio, your natal North Node is in Taurus. And so what you're going to see is like, the North and South Node are going to start coming into a square with your Saturn. And that's going to be like in the fall, which is literally pushing you to evolve in the way that you're working from home, or maybe do something even more creative or more expressive or more kind of independent, or something unique or unconventional. You may have to be reevaluating what your fees are and what you're charging and what you think your worth is, Saturn in the 2nd. And then you'll also see the North and the South Node square your North and your South Node. And this for me is kind of like, all right, going to be a time where when I went through this transit, there's a lot of, well, whatever you're used to doing, right? South Node is not quite working anymore. Where you want to go, North Node, doesn't quite feel within reach right now, so to say. And the North and the South Node squaring is saying we're kind of at a crossroads, and we have to be a little bit more flexible, and we have to learn to do things differently. From this, I would actually take more the angle of the Libra rising horoscope, where I would be like, okay, Libra, you know, you got a Venus retrograde, a Mercury retrograde in your second house. You've got, you know, a North Node going through your fifth, and it's kind of squaring your Saturn. And it's just basically saying you're going to get creative, and you're going to realize that you need more. You need to charge more. You need to know your value. And there's going to be a lot of interesting things that are going to shift about the way that you do your business. Looking to hire someone to manage it for me. I'm also going the Pluto square too. Yeah, I saw that. And also looking to buy an investment property. You have a lot going on. So, I mean, anything that's in regards to getting grounded and creating your home, or anything that's going to be relating to property, is going to take precedent with the North Node going into your fourth. The one thing that you want to know is that if you're in Pluto square Pluto, and you're also seeing that at a 4, and then you're also seeing like the North and the South Nodes square your South Node and Saturn, I would really advise you not to even remotely consider buying property until at least like next February through April. You want to wait until those squares are done, because you could actually have some kind of a loss where you buy something and then the property isn't as valuable next year. And I'd like to see the solar eclipse happen in Aquarius next February and the Mercury retrograde. And I think that come the second half of February into March of next year, it would be a much better time for you to be looking at buying something. I'd be handling the direction of where you're going with some of the work stuff first. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Definitely let me know. It's always a wild time when you see like the nodal squares. But it's going to be good. You're going to see that some of the work success might come a little bit easier than you anticipated. All right, we have got Des, and then DJ. Did you want your reading? Let me know, let me know, let me know. And then Adriana, you sent a payment in after we closed the reading, so I'm going to have to send that back to you. I'm just letting you know. All right, let's see. So we've got Des. What's up, Des? Let's see what Des has to say. So she's a level 4 member. Des is Starsight. There we go. Hi, Candace. Using my monthly to look into the up and coming full moon is helping me clear out what it's making room for. Also wanted to say you're right about all the medical stuff. It's been crazy. All right, well, let's take a look. Cancer rising, sun in Gemini, moon in Virgo. Well, let's see what this full moon's doing for you. Especially from like the Virgo moon perspective, you're going to see a lot of like health related things. Well, the full moon is pretty much conjunct your North Node, and I would start there. Especially interesting because it's got Jupiter and the Sun on your South Node, and it's going to be squaring your Venus. Whoa. All right, so let's break it down. Basically, long story short, that's going to create what we call a fixed T-square. And if Venus is going to be the focal point of that T-square, it's going to be bringing up themes connecting to community, comfort, value, friendships, anything that connects with your home life. And the moon is squaring Venus, and the sun and Jupiter are going to be squaring Venus. So it's just bringing up this ongoing kind of like pressure maybe that you have been going through when it comes to making changes with your relationships, be that romantic because it is in your 7th house, or socially because Venus is the ruler of your 11th. Now, as you know, yeah, I've said, you know, something has to die off under this full moon, and that's the moon conjunct Pluto and that conclusion and completion for something positive, something new, something generous, something warm to kind of come in. That's the sun and Jupiter that's going to be in Leo. Because it's going to be on your South Node, and I say this lovingly, but I feel like there's going to be something where you're going to have to go, okay, I have to leave my ego at the door. And that's like literally the theme of the South Node in Leo, just in a nutshell. And that's your natal South Node. And whatever it is that you release ego-wise, you're going to be blessed with some kind of positive change. So In a personal sense, it could go, well, I'm letting go of this feeling that I have to be alone, or that, you know, I'm always going to kind of be the Lone Ranger, or nobody ever sees me, or nobody loves me, you know, that kind of stuff. And you're letting that go. Why? So you can release, so you can let a transformative, you know, North Node, positive change in a relationship actually come forward. Also, the other thing that I think about is that this can be touching on your physical health and your body. You know, Jupiter rules your health and the sun is connected to your physical disposition. So there may be a sense of you like having to remind yourself, this is just a vessel, you know, it is just here for a temporary time. I am not, you know, what is considered to be my physical state. I'm having to rise above, or, you know, kind of release any ideas of, you know, I am, you know, however I'm kind of feeling or however I'm looking, and like detaching from anything that could be health related problems. So Des says, I've been definitely expanding my social circle and planning on auditioning for something that would be a dream come true. Definitely leaving my ego at the door, learning my voice and signing. Okay, cool. So the other way of looking at this is the positive is this is going to be the moon and Pluto sextile Saturn. So if you're going out for auditions and you're trying to be seen, that's a good time to make some change in your career. And you're going to see Saturn is starting to come into a trine with Jupiter and the sun. And I think a lot of Cancer risings under this particular lunation are going to see that there is an opportunity to have like a lucrative offer that can come in, because Saturn is also the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So it could be a job offer. It could be somebody who wants to invest in something. It could be somebody who wants to invest in your success and your dreams, you know. Over my stage fright through exposure therapy and putting out what wouldn't consider perfect recordings to do so. So that's also cool. I mean, Sun and Jupiter in the first is like have to be seen, you know, and like what's dying off is the psychological fear, you know, Moon Pluto of, you know, being exposed, being vulnerable, like not being perfect, like something like that is basically going to be happening. So the trine also to your sun is also enhancing feeling like solid and supported through friendship groups and networking and community. And also it's going to bring you connections that can help you get paid and help you like really tap into your talents and be seen, right? So like everything's kind of ping-ponging off of everything in your chart. This is sextiling your Mars, which is good for work. This is sextiling Saturn, which is good for partnerships. This is trining Uranus, which is good for friends. This is going to be coming kind of slightly into a trine with Mars in your 12th house, where you're releasing any outdated fears basically about your career. This is essentially where the basket formation is now all coming into play. And if you notice, you know, all of like the signs that are getting highlighted are basically within, you know, the top part of the horizon. So it's all about how do we get Des out there? How do we get her out into the open? How do we get her to be seen? And also how can we really supply her with a sense of supporting people? You know, Moon Pluto could be really intense female friends, or people who are fearlessly, you know, encouraging you, or managers maybe that come in that want to kind of work for you. Something like that could basically be happening. And it could take a couple weeks. It's not going to happen immediately. You can see it within about 2 to 4 weeks of the full moon taking place. My health is a downward tailspin through the question marks as to what's causing this new mystery illness that needs to be solved, but we've been in this spot before and I have faith it'll work out. For that, you're going to have to be really keeping an eye on your Jupiter. Yes, you know, Saturn's going to be squaring your Jupiter all year. And if you look, Saturn is in the focal point of a square to your Jupiter Chiron, so literally emotional wounds, healing, physical body, and Neptune, Uranus in your 6th, which is going to be like weird, strange, and symptoms. I'm going to go on a limb here, but I feel like it was inevitable you were going to have a health problem with that square, with Saturn kind of triggering that square here through your 10th. And with the trine now that's coming in, even though you're dealing with health problems, you're deciding to take a little bit of time to rethink your vision and your direction when it comes to, you know, what you're doing out in the world. So in a way, it's almost like kind of giving you the opportunity to go, I'm working through some health stuff, but at the same time, it's making me think long and hard about what I want to be doing professionally and what is my calling, right? So, I mean, I think it's going to be positive. You'll have to watch for when Jupiter and Saturn start to trine. That's when you're probably going to see a little bit more traction with like the health stuff stabilizing in August. And you'll see another one that's going to be happening in late spring and summer of next year, right? She says, if I get in with the audition, I'll be working with someone who inspired me to get into content creation in the first place, and also inspired me not to give up on singing. And by the way, you know, your voice is very much like Taurus. Taurus is connected to singing. So you're seeing like this moon square Venus. And so this means that not only have you overcome some of the fears, but you've got people who are really cheering you on, and they're talking about wanting to connect and collaborate with you. And that, what does that do? It puts you in the spotlight, Sun and Jupiter being in the first house. And that can also say that you find your voice, but you're also overcoming any issues that you've had with your health. And maybe other people are wanting to kind of spotlight the fact that you're overcoming some of these, health related matters, but still wanting to put your music out there, still wanting to put your voice out there. And that may also give you a little bit of a platform. Like Aquarius is what's weird and what's unconventional. So I think that's what we're going to be more opening up to in a community level over the next couple of years. I don't think we're going to base stardom off of people having to be perfect or people having to be young or youthful or people being popular. I think what's weird, what's wacky, what's unconventional, what's not traditional, or people who have gone through, things that have been crisis, right? Pluto in Aquarius is actually what's going to be a little bit more of a hot topic. And I think you're going to see a lot of like underdog stories of people who made it against all the odds. So, it's okay to be able to share some of those like stories, All right. Hopefully that's helpful. DJ, I'll put your info in there. I did not see your birth information. Oh, there it is. Okay, thank you. So can we make a note of that so I can come back to that in just a second? And then Rosie, yeah, I'll put you on the list. All right. So let's see, who else do we have here? All right, so we've got DJ. So let me just plug DJ's info in, and then Rosie, you're level 4. I'll put you on here. Eight 1970 Chicago. You're welcome. 10:20 a.m. All right, so what's up, DJ? Welcome to level 4. Let's see what your question is. What's the main focus of the Aquarius full moon has for me? Was a bit delayed, couldn't make up my mind on a question. No worries. Good news is you can come back next month. You can do it all over again. All right, so have you ever looked at your chart before? Because I know I have not seen your chart, but now I've got it. Libra rising, Sun in Leo. You've got your moon in Pisces. Okay, so that North Node has been kind of hovering around your moon. So I'm going to go on a little bit of a limb here. Having the North Node moon conjunction is a very fortuitous time. And we're gonna talk about the full moon in a second. But I really want to talk about this because the moon's connected to, femininity, women, obviously romance, creativity in your 5th house, anything that's about self-expression. And I really just want to hone in on that because this could be a really significant time for those topics in your life, okay? And I don't know if you're a man or a woman, I don't know, I can just see your screen name. But anything that's bringing you joy, creativity, or personal fulfillment is the name of the game. And the reason why I say that is because for Libra risings, the full moon that's coming in is connected to their whole sign 5th house, right? And obviously as a Libra rising, and like, look at this, you've got a bunch of Libra in your chart, Uranus and Venus, you're gonna see this full moon is going to be trining your chart ruler, Venus, okay? Beautiful. Also trining Uranus, ruler of your 5th house. So I think for a lot of like Libra risings, it's gonna be, what is this creative completion that you're kind of currently working through? It started in February of this year when you had a solar eclipse. If you have children, it could be about your children. If you don't, it could be about your love life. It could be new hobbies or a new way of kind of expressing and kind of creating that is now coming to the surface. And also being another Libra rising, I'll tell you, when the world zigs, we zag. And that's because Libra rising horoscopes, their entire chart is inverted, right? Usually we look at Aries here and Libra in the 7th, but it's backwards for us. So when you hear a lot of like, oh, South Node's going into, Leo, so we don't want to be selfish. We don't need to be the star. We don't want to be me, 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 me. It's completely ass backwards because the North Node is actually going through your 5th house. And it's like, nope, now it's all about you. What you love, what you create, what you enjoy, how you play, all of that stuff is kind of coming to mind. Here's the drama. The drama is that it's going to conjunct Pluto. And this means that there is almost like something coming to completion, but at the same time, you're like, oh, there's some kind of like a crisis around it where it's like, I want to, you know, be able to share something about this new relationship situation or like this new joy or this new positive thing in my life. But I don't know how other people are going to react or respond to it. And that's going to be the opposition to the Sun and Jupiter that's picking up the energy of your 11th house. You will notice, and you already have to some extent, because the South Node's already been going through your 11th house, there's just a lot of changes in your friendships. And it's not that you're being a bad friend. It's just more that you're just noticing that the karma maybe is kind of completing with certain relationships, groups, or kind of like social connections, even people online, where you're moving away from other people's drama, South Node and Leo, and you're moving more in the direction of being like, I would rather just focus on joy, you know, or I just want to make art, or I just want to be in love, or I just want to have fun. And with some of these trines that are setting up, starting with the full moon, but you're going to have for the next couple of years, Pluto trine your Venus, you know, Pluto trine your natal Uranus, North Node eclipses in your 5th. It's about having fun. And a lot of Libra risings haven't been feeling that recently with Saturn and Neptune kind of being in their 7th house. So it's opening the door to, if there isn't a romantic relationship that's either, you know, kind of blooming or something that has already been around, it's, well, how can I love myself and love myself some more? And what can I do to be able to kind of get in touch with that inner child and have fun and create? And my interpretation so far of like, you know, the energy with Pluto and Aquarius is like a lot of Libra risings are just becoming super obsessed with something that they love to do. Sometimes it's astrology, right? Through Aquarius. Sometimes it's going to be trading. Sometimes it's going to be about performing or creating. Like you got DJ in your screen name. Like, do you want to DJ? Are you on stage? Because that's very much the 5th house. And could it be that you're doing your own streaming or you're doing your own thing where you're mixing music and stuff and you're kind of performing like, you know, in a digital way where you're streaming? I mean, maybe. My goodness, I've been juggling all sorts of things. I've been kind of solo. Yes, true. I was dealing lots of etc. I want to have fun and treat myself. This is about having fun and playing in the play box and in the sandbox. And right now, I think that it's about you realizing that the urge to create, the urge to play is so strong that you have to lean into it and you have to make time for it and you have to listen to it. And this is like the gateway of what's going to be basically 18 months of having the North Node going through your 5th house. Great for romance if you are single. You will definitely see that, especially with Saturn, which is going to start coming into a sextile with the North Node throughout the next year. And I think you're also going to dig the fact that, you know, Pluto is coming into a trine with your Venus, which is a very powerful kind of turning point. Very, very powerful opening point for self-expression and creativity. So hopefully that's helpful for you. Hopefully you stay as a member so you can come back next month at any one of the Fridays, and I'll keep your chart on file if you have any questions. But enjoy that full moon. All right, and we've got Rosie. Been practicing tarot, not myself, but when I read, they're like, yes, you're right. Tarot is very much connected to Aquarius in the 5th house. So it's cool that you're doing that. That can be an excellent hobby for you to be participating in, especially for like self-awareness, 5th house. All right, Miss Rosie. I just want to confirm I have the right info for you, Rosie. Sorry, I've got a couple. March 15th, 84. What's up, Robbie? I just saw you in here. Hey, girl, hey. All right, so I'm assuming this is yours from what I remember. Pisces Sun, right? Cool. All right, let's see what Rosie wants to know. Did you have a specific question? Peace and light. Reading for me, Rosie. My employer is going through a sale, so some folks might be released. Will I be asked to leave in 2026? Let's look. All right, so your 10th house is your career, and my eyes immediately go to knowing that Venus, the ruler of your 10th house, this fall will retrograde over your Pluto, and Mercury will retrograde over your Saturn, kind of between October and November, okay? So like there's a pretty decent chance. The other thing that I'm thinking about that is kind of saving you in a way is Venus ruling your north node, ruling your 10th house, is being transited by the current north node. So it literally is like a 50-50. You know, Venus on the north node is saying you're employed for now, but I would be more concerned when you see a negative aspect, maybe with Mercury or with Venus. And so let's kind of scroll ahead here and let's look at this. So Venus is going to come into shadow. She's going to hit Pluto. And then you're going to start seeing Mercury making an opposition to Saturn. I'd be keeping my eyes out around September 13th, 14th, 15th to see if there's anything that's kind of coming up where they're like talking about being like, yeah, you know, we're going to, I mean, they for sure are going to let people go. I can see that with Uranus in your 6th and the retrograde in your 10th, but just to get an idea of what they're kind of saying. And then if you were going to leave, it would most likely be when Venus is retrograding over your Pluto, and then you're going to see the Mercury retrograde over your Saturn. So from October 18th, basically until November 4th. If you're going to get like my guess is that would be the window, because it's going to retrograde over a malefic. It's going to pick up Uranus, which is in your whole sign 6th. And then Venus is retrograding. And it's possible with some of these transits that are going on in your 8th house, where you've got Mars, which is about gains, in Jupiter, like, you know, you may get a severance. So they may offer a severance package if some people want to walk away, and they'll be like, if you're willing to take it, this is what we'll give you, because they may not want to pay unemployment. It's possible that if there is a sense of being let go also, that, you know, you qualify for these benefits, because the 8th house would be like unemployment or anything that's connected to investments or savings or bonds, although I'm not saying you should go into it. But other people are going to be talking about their financial issues this year, especially for Capricorn risings, because Mars and Jupiter represent other people saying we're having to cut back. And it's going to be right over your moon. And that's going to be about, you know, people who you kind of like, you know, either partner with or relate to in some way. And then you will also see a retrograde that's going to happen there later next year. But I think if you make it through that window that I gave you from October into early November, I don't really necessarily see anything that's like saying that your job is going to definitively end. Now, the other thing that I think about is like the up and coming eclipse in Pisces. That's going to be right on your Venus. And Venus is in opposition almost to Saturn. So, you know, you have job stability there. You have job stability there. I don't see anything changing there. But down the road, like in the future, you know, when you've got Mars coming into an opposition, maybe with Saturn next summer, you've got Uranus that's kind of going deeper into your 9th house, and a retrograde that's going to happen next October. I mean, whatever's happening this November, it's going to happen again next fall. So she says it could be everyone stays, but our rates are negotiated down as a group. Yeah, but for right now, I would say you have the most stability with the North Node conjunct your Venus. So I don't really get the impression you necessarily have to go anywhere. You might want to think back to what happened in fall of 2018. That was the last time that Venus went retrograde in Libra, and you probably saw that there was like either a job change, or there was a promotion, or you switched jobs, or you went to a new position. It's just this Venus retrograde is particularly nasty because it's going to be in Scorpio. It's going to be conjunct Mercury. It's going to square Jupiter. So it's going to make it all bigger. It's going to square, you know, Pluto. I mean, there's just going to be a lot of things that are going to be like major changes to your benefits. It's going to be your benefits. So whether that's your 401k, your investment accounts, your health insurance, like all that stuff, that's the bigger thing that I would be more focused on is, you know, if they offer you something, is it going to be beneficial for you to take it? And with your Pluto square Pluto, I would also think about how it's highlighting for you where like your finances are kind of really coming under like the pressure cooker, because it's the opening square. And this is like trying to teach you to be more open to being diverse with your resources, or finding new ways to invest in things so you can have financial security. All of that happened in 2018. I got a new boss. Okay, so then you went to your own department. It was great. See, so the retrograde isn't all bad. But the problem here is like there may be a lot of like casualties around you at work. Like I think of like bodies, you know, with like Venus retrograde in Scorpio, like, you know, everything kind of like falls to the ground. I know, kind of grim, but especially over your natal Pluto. So there's going to be like this restructuring of power. And then it may put you in a position where it's like, okay, well, you know, you're one of the people that we chose to stay. Do you get put in a higher position? You know, if things go left, I'll teach. Sure. And like, look, you know, Mars is going to deal with your goals. It's also going to deal with things that are connected to being close to home. Like, I don't think you're in a position where you have to think about whether or not you're going to, you know, go into education or go back to teaching if that's something that you used to do, you know, until the beginning of the year. But if it played out well last time, I think it may play out well for you this time. You just need to make sure that, you know, if they're negotiating anything with you or anything kind of connected to your salary or even your benefits, you need to make sure that it's going to work in your favor, you know? So hopefully that's helpful. Think also about the Mercury retrograde last year, because that Mercury retrograde went in conjunction to Mars and it was right over your Saturn. So they were already talking about this stuff in October of this last year. They're going to do it again this year, and then they're going to do it again next year, because they're going to keep having a retrograde that's going to be right over your Saturn, and that impacts you pretty significantly because Saturn is your chart ruler. So with Saturn retrograde, it's like there's going to be people who you're friends with or people who you consider part of your crew that's going to go. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Rosie. Good luck. I've got Emmy next, and then we've got Grace, Emily, Mandy, April, Jacqueline, Nicole, Abigail, Stacy, Vane. So Jacqueline, we haven't gotten to you yet. Yeah, the one last year was not fun. The Mercury retrograde conjunct Mars, it was like everything broke down or like burned out, you know? All right, Grace. I think I just needed the time that you were born, Grace. I think you sent that, though. Let me see if I can find it. And that's going to be the video on Sunday, the Saturn retrograde in Aries. So make sure you guys don't miss that. That's going to be a big energy with the nodal shift, too. Grace, 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 I'm trying to find you. If you're in the chat, send me your birth time. There she is. 8:05 a.m. All right, so Miss Grace, I have you here, Sag rising, Sun in Scorpio, Moon in Aquarius, November 3rd, 8:05 a.m. Feeling lost and uncertain about my career. What guidance do you have for me and my career and financial future? Well, I think it's safe to say, I mean, if I had $1 for every Sag rising who's told me that recently, I'd have quite a bit of money. And I say that because the South Node's been going through Virgo, which is your 10th house for Sagittariuses. And it looks like as it's been going through your 10th house, it's been squaring your Pluto, your Chiron, and your Venus. So there's a lot of like, what am I here to do? What is my purpose? What is my direction? And a lot of you guys have just been feeling kind of burnt out and under the weather. Anyway, because you have a lot of Sag and you have some Virgo and you have some Gemini in your chart, as these planets and like Uranus, Mars, the South Node, the North Node have been syncing up, it's been kind of creating a bunch of like mutable crosses in your chart where you feel like you don't know what direction you're going in with work, you're having to figure out home, relationships are kind of all over the map. And we need to see something happen for you connected to Mercury for, you know, career stuff to improve. There's other stuff going on in this chart, babe. You know, Pluto is right now right on top of your moon and your Neptune. So that does bring a bit of like mental stress, especially in your second house, over resources or safety and security. It's squaring your Mercury, which rules your career, where this tells me that there is a need to change and transform something about your professional goals. Maybe there's a change with your networking or your community, and that's going to be kind of squaring off and on all year. When that starts to stabilize, though, and it starts to come out of that square, which will be kind of the beginning of the year, things are going to get a lot easier. I think that if this were me, I would really be paying attention to what's happening with Pluto trine my Jupiter. This tells me that working with a counselor, a therapist, an astrologer, even working with a career coach or somebody who can be giving you some kind of direction about how to better manage emotionally, you know, so you don't feel like you're just burning yourself out. And I also would be really leaning into Venus moving through your 10th house. It's there right now. So that's going to give you a little bit more opportunity for professional doings, although it's going to kind of rub up into a square with Mars. So it's a little tense at the end of July, starts to break free, and then you start to see it's coming into conjunction with your natal Mars. So that can be helping you do more creative work. That could help you feel like you can kind of get the spotlight. You can be really feeling blessed in your professional life around the beginning of August. And then the beginning of next year, you will see there is going to be a Mars retrograde that's going to be in Virgo. And that's where a lot of my Sagittarius and Sag risings are going to have some big changes in their professional life. Now look at this. It's going to get up all the way to about 10 degrees in January. So that means that you're going to start thinking about doing either your own business or something creative or something more fulfilling. It will retrograde, so you're going to change directions with your career, and it will square your Pluto, and it will also square your Jupiter. So you're definitely going to have a big career change at the beginning of next year. That's and it's inevitable. And you'll be going through it pretty much from early January all the way until about mid-April. And with Mars retrograde, you might go back to school. You might decide to go and get some training or certification for something. And by the time you get to April, it's going to be trining Saturn. So it's going to help you make money in a way that feels more pleasurable or something that's going to feel more fulfilling or more creative. So I guess what I'm getting at is it's not one thing. There's multiple things happening in your chart. And probably the biggest is Pluto conjunct your Neptune and your moon, and you're like, how do I make money? You know, I'm stressed out. And the square to Mercury also makes you feel like your professional goals are changing and you kind of feel stuck. I would love to see you work with a career coach. I think like with Uranus in your 7th house, a career coach, a therapist, even like a headhunter, somebody who is like looking for, people who have specific talents to maybe try to see if you can, shift directions in your career would be like really helpful. And it's going to help you get out of some of the heaviness of the Pluto conjunction and the Pluto square. But even if those things don't happen, you're looking at the beginning of January until April of next year to have some pretty noticeable changes in your career department. And I think it's going to be better for you in the long term. And I think it's also going to give you more of an opportunity to have creative freedom. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Grace. Go and learn about those transits. Pluto square Mercury. Pluto conjunct your natal moon and your natal Neptune. Really got to watch mental health stuff as you're going through some of those transits, my dear. Journaling, exercise, going for walks, writing, blogging. I mean, I almost wonder if you're going to do something that's like writing or media oriented to kind of get out of some of the work that you've been doing, or something education based as Jupiter's going into your 9th. All right, we have got Emily and then Mandy and then April. Let's pull up Emily. All right, Emily. Emily says, help me. This full moon is exactly conjunct my ascendant, and I'm freaking out a bit, along with other crazy transits happening that are coming up. What should I expect coming up the next month or by the end of the year? Backstory, I didn't know if I should move apartments or move back to California. I'm in Seattle. Having trouble dating right now, and the person I have been on and off with the past few years has pulled back with communication and not feeling the healthiest right now. Nothing feels good. I'm very much in a stuck state and I don't know how to move. All right, well, let's talk about it. Let's see what's kind of going on with that. And you're an Aquarius rising, your sun is in Aquarius, your moon is in Virgo, and you have this full moon that is going to be taking place here on your ascendant. Well, first things first, you got to go back in time. You got to think about where this moon started and where it was seated 6 months ago. Because 6 months ago, when you had the solar eclipse that was in your first house of self, it looks like it was pretty darn close to your Saturn and also your Lilith, which was bringing up some really intense feelings of independence, some unwillingness maybe to be kind of tethered, to any one particular place or person. And there is like a restlessness that kind of comes up with Lilith. Now that eclipse was ruled by and also squaring Uranus on your IC. So it was basically saying within 6 months' time, you were going to see that you were going to get restless. You were going to be contemplating maybe moving back home or having a shakeup with your living situation. That was baked into the chart. You were also seeing that there were eclipses that were going to be taking place in Virgo. That was kind of signaling the South Node, moving through the conjunction with your moon, where there was also going to be some significant changes or maybe feeling kind of emotionally detached or distant from a partner, okay? So now you get 6 months down the road, and it sounds like a lot of these things are happening. I for one, am trying to look at the full moon as a positive thing. I know that it's going to bring some really gnarly things up collectively with that Moon-Pluto conjunction, but I also know it's going to bring something really positive in as well. So the Moon-Pluto in your first house is more picking up the energy of your 6th, which is the moon, and also your 10th, which is your career and your status. And it's a lot of you going, what is not healthy? And if something's not healthy, is it my job to basically, manage that and say, okay, here's the boundary, here's the line, or, I will or will not do this thing, or I will or will not allow, this toxic kind of stuff to take up space in my body. And it can create an emotional crisis. It can also mean that it's impacting your digestion, or there's some kind of connection to your health or your habits. And it's really important to watch your health. And it's also important to watch your emotional health, right? Cancer is tied to the 6th house. On the other hand, the polarity represents that intensity that's just like, I don't know if I can take, all of this stuff, all of these emotions. I don't know if I can handle it. And it's making it feel bigger, because the Sun and Jupiter are going into your 7th house. So it can mean that it almost like creates such a situation that's so big to the point where it pops. And you might be looking at things going like, okay, now finally these emotions are bubbling over, and I can't stand a situation where this person is acting, in a South Node in Leo way. Immature, selfish, arrogant. I mean, unfortunately, these are some of the South Node kind of tendencies in Leo, especially with the Sun conjunct Jupiter. And it may bring up the need for you to kind of confront, like, I don't like the way that this feels, and I don't like the imbalance. And it may mean that you have to kind of trigger a change in a relationship to, bring in somebody new, or to bring somebody down a few pegs. On top of that, and I'm saying the things that I'm saying to you specifically because you've got Mars conjunct your South Node, so that's perfect time to cut somebody loose who you've been dating. You've also got, on the other end of the spectrum, Neptune, which has been conjunct your Venus. So there can be a sense of having or suffering a sense of abuse in a relationship or neglect. There could be a sense of having rose-colored glasses and not seeing things so clearly. And now Neptune's retrograding away from your Venus. So there's this like realization that's like, oh, this doesn't feel good. So you've got 1, you've got 2, you've got 3, you've got 4 transits that are all kind of saying the same thing, while the North Node is heading through the sign of Aquarius now, where it's going to come into conjunction with your natal Saturn, your chart ruler, and your Sun. This means that Sun, Saturn, your entire life, you have to learn to really have a strong relationship with yourself. It doesn't mean you can't have relationships. You can. Saturn and the Sun are in conjunction. Sun does well in the first house, even though it's debilitated in Aquarius. Saturn, it does well also in Aquarius because that's its home sign, but it's not until you know who you are, you know your boundaries, you know your non-negotiables, and what you will and will not tolerate, that's when relationships are going to kind of check in. And you've got a year here of an eclipse, in your 7th house where you're going to probably shake somebody loose next month anyway. And then you've got, a Mars retrograde, some other retrogrades that are going to take place next year. For all Aquarius risings, relationships are not stable for the next year. They're just not. You're not going to see that. Even in committed relationships, there's going to be like, oh, do I want to cut, ties with people? We'll see that when Mars and Jupiter kind of come together with the South Node several times. So rather than waiting for those things to happen and, kind of feeling like, oh my gosh, this person's back and forth and they're on and off, save yourself the trouble. Start leaning into the North Node hitting Saturn and the Sun. That's just like, does this feel good to me? No. And lean into Uranus in your 4th house. That's now trining your ascendant. It could be a time where, a breakup is just kind of creating like the entryway for you to potentially move or to relocate. And I think with Uranus retrograde, you're going to do that anyway. You'll see that later in the year. And you're going to see like a lunar eclipse that's going to be in Pisces squaring Uranus. So it's going to be, do I want to spend the money moving back home? Do I have to make changes with physical things? Yeah, probably. But trust me, save your energy. You're going to be going back and forth with people here. It's going to happen in mid-November. And then you're going to be going back and forth with people here. It's going to be happening in February when you have eclipses and then a Mercury retrograde. And that's not going to stop until April. And that North Node conjunct your Sun and Saturn tells me everything I need to know. You're going to have to either be away from somebody, and maybe that means you have to take space from somebody and be like, yeah, I'm not really getting what I need here. So, you know, if I don't really feel like I need to stay, then you leave. And then you may go back and forth at a distance for a little bit at the beginning of the year before you decide whether or not you're willing to go back into that relationship. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I know it's difficult to hear about it. I'd rather tell you that than have you be strung along and then for the next 6 months being like, why is this person in and out of my life? You will probably have that with anybody that you're dealing with. So the more self-reliant you become, the easier it's going to be for you to navigate that time. All right, so we've got Emmy. I know it's difficult. I'm not trying to sound harsh, but I'm looking out for you because your Sun and your Saturn, the way that it is, you almost have to treat everybody like that in relationships. You have to be like the Punisher. Like if it's not serving you, then you got to be like, okay, bye. Like you're really tapping into your inner Aquarius now. It's just detachment, freedom, right? And you'll draw people in with the Jupiter transit all year. You're not going to have problems meeting people. You're going to meet people far away. Yeah, but this is where it's going to get interesting because the more that you're detached, the more people are going to come in. That's the best advice I can give any of my Aquarius risings. With the South Node in your 7th house, don't focus on relationships. You know, don't even be working or thinking about them or, you know, asking about, you know, future relationships. I would be so detached so that when the retrogrades happen, it'll bring a relationship and that could be a better match. All right, let's do Emmy. What's up, Emmy? Nice to see you back. So Miss Emmy, Aquarius rising, Sun in Pisces, Moon in Cancer. And she was a super chat. Hi, would love a reading on the full moon. Full context and message below. Been feeling a bit run down these past couple weeks. I feel like change is on the way, but just waiting and waiting. Had multiple solo trips this year and one more at the end of August. And I'm planning to get back to a walking routine and tracking my food and getting my health in order. Still single. Thanks for all your content. All right, well, let's take a look. Let's see what you need to know about this full moon. It sounds like you already kind of have an idea because it's in the same sign as your ascendant, that it's really highlighting anything that's tied to your physical body, obviously the moon, your health, your habits. And I'm going to cut you some slack here, and the other Aquarius risings too, because you guys have had Mercury retrograde in your 6th, where it's like, honestly, I've had those retrogrades. We slack a little bit on our habits. We don't always stick to our routine, or whether that's our sleep routine or eating routine. We don't always put our laundry away, like all that stuff. And it's been in a square to Saturn. So it's definitely materialized for you where you're like, okay, I know I need to make changes to my physical fitness and my diet. And the square to Saturn is actually telling me it's more linked to movement than it is what you are or not eating. Okay, so movement. Saturn retrograde this week means you as an Aquarius rising, you have to get back to, you know, using your 3rd house things, your legs, your lungs, maybe journaling. And it's looking back at the 2nd house. So it's literally about using a gadget or something in your hand to log your food, right? Funny. The other thing is that I think the full moon is just kind of showing you and really highlighting in your 12th house, because it's in your 12th house, some self-sabotaging behavior. And I would be like, are you overworking to the point where you're exhausted and then you come home and you just want to like sloth around and just order takeout and then like stay up all night and watch TV and then go to bed late? Because that's usually what the kind of stuff we do in the 12th house. And maybe the Pluto connection is showing you where it's some unhealthy habits that are kind of derivative from feeling like you're overworking or you're overdoing it. I've seen this a lot for Aquarius risings the last couple of weeks. I also think that the positive here is, you know, the moon Pluto is really highlighting for Aquarius risings. That's like, damn, you know, I definitely do have some bad habits, or have some bad working habits, or I'm overdoing it, or I'm, you know, trying to maybe do too much, or I'm burning myself out. And the opposition to the Sun and Jupiter is going to be about people who are giving you feedback. So 7th house could be your astrologer. It's somebody being like, look, it's not the end of the world, you know, and this trine to Saturn and Neptune is just saying be more aware of not only what you're eating, but like how's your mindset, you know, your patterns, your habits, your repetition. I think that like Saturn retrograde is going to have you going, okay, maybe I need to physically write something down, or I need to create a calendar. Instead of just tracking on a phone, it's like I need to have a to-do list and make sure that I'm checking it off. And also this means that maybe you're incorporating it into your schedule where you're like, well, you know, I'm working, but I have a lunch break, and maybe I have lunch and I go for a walk, you know, and I get that into my routine, and I try to work it in like midday. The full moon is, I think, the most dramatic for Aquarius rising, because it's going to be, you know, in the heart of your guys' ascendant sign. But also I think it's not too easy for my Pisces risings or my Pisces sun. So you're a Pisces sun, because it represents all of the things that are kind of going on for you subconsciously, where there is this like yearning for romance, or this yearning for connection. So when you also say like, well, I'm still single, nothing's happening, yeah, you're going to feel that a little bit more, just due to the nature of it, you know, kind of being obviously 12th house to your sun. But I do think that the romance department is going to significantly change, and you'll see with Jupiter going into your, you know, into your 7th house, and also starting to trine your Mercury and your Saturn here over the next month, that relationship opportunities most likely will open up. The last time I did great with walking and logging food, it was when Saturn was crossing my ascendant. So I know it works for me, but it was totally different now, and I wasn't at a desk job before. Yeah. And so I think with like Saturn in the whole sign 3rd house, I would get a walking pad, or I would get a standing desk, right? You could do something like that. And it's not your typical Saturn transit. When Saturn entered into Aries, first thing it did was square your moon. So you're going to have some issue balancing walking 3rd house with work. And then Neptune came in and it started squaring your moon. And Saturn and Neptune have been sitting on your Mercury, where it's more about the psychological patterning of what is and what is not healthy, and like reworking what it means to like actually take care of yourself. And in this case, making the time or making the investment, right? 2nd house, and getting things that's going to benefit your health. So that's a difficult transit. Saturn and Neptune coming into a square with your moon in the same year, and it's your Saturn return. I'm going to cut you a break here. So I think the Saturn return, it's still in effect. You're going to have that basically, you know, until the end of this year. Saturn's going to turn retrograde, you know, here at the end of the week, and it's going to go all the way back to, I think, about like 6-7 degrees. So your Saturn return is going to continue to the end of the year, and it'll be within a 7-degree range of your moon. So it's kind of safe to say you're pretty much dealing with these themes basically until the new year, right? I felt the yearning, very over it. I'm trying to focus on me, but it's difficult. I just get Pisces to Lulu. You'll see relationship opportunities several times over with the transits that are going to be in your 7th, especially, you know, being a Pisces. I think that you're going to see a lot of relationship changes across the board, and you need to see something positive going on with your sun, right? So like you still have another Pisces eclipse coming. You're definitely going to start to see, like next year when Jupiter is opposing your sun, that's going to be a big relationship for you too. And the year that you turn 30, so next year, that'll be your relationship year. That's when you're going to see everything change. With the Sun and Venus in the 2nd house, you're definitely going to see your finances and also your relationships change. This is the year that you get your shit together. 29 is when you have your annual perfection year 6. So we have to really focus on our health, our habits. And if you notice, your moon squares Saturn. So it's already saying, you know, your communication habits, your health habits, your work habits, all those things need to get worked out before you're ready to really show up in relationship land. Quite a few transits you're going through at one time, so give yourself a little bit of credit. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Emmy. All right, so we've got Mandy, and then April, and then Jacqueline. You're welcome. Let's see, where's Mandy? All right, Miss Mandy. Let's see here if I can find your info. let's see. All right. Hi, Candace. I probably won't make it to hear the live. Okay. What do the upcoming transits have in store for me in regards to dating? If not much, any general information is appreciated. All right. So you're July 15th, 1995, Redwood City. I had you at 4:15 p.m. You did not put your birth time, so I'm just going to assume that is correct. And you want to know about dating, which is going to be more tied to your 7th house, which is Venus. And it's going to be more tied to your 5th house, which is technically Mars. But I think you're going to see some stuff from this up and coming Pisces eclipse next month. All right, so this is what I think. I think that over the last month, you have had a Mercury retrograde over your Venus. Okay, so this means that you have been doing some deep internal dives, reevaluations, reassessments about some shadow stuff. 8th house is like secrets, or where you didn't get closure, or where you have issues with security or intimacy. And Venus rules partners. So there can be a sense of you feeling like you're questioning whether or not you want to connect with somebody from the past, or maybe somebody from the past has been kind of trying to connect with you, but has been very inconsistent, or there's been a sense of you going, I don't want to go back there. It's dead and buried. I want to leave it there, right? 8th house. And that's hard for you because even though you're a Cancer, girl, look at all this 8th house energy and a Scorpio rising. So you can have a tendency to really hold on to the past and like also have a hard time maybe with relationships and like multiples where somebody will come in, but they're in a complicated situation, right? Venus in your 8th. So the last month has not been the time. With a Mercury retrograde over your Venus and also that squaring Saturn, there's probably been just a sense of being like, I feel lonely. I want connection. How do I do that? How do I make time for that? And I do think that if you didn't take the bait and if you didn't fall into going back to, complicated people in the past, you're probably going to be rewarded. And the next place that my mind kind of goes to is the fact that you're going to have a Venus-Mars conjunction. So you're Mars, other people are Venus, on your natal Mars. So there's an opportunity for romantic connections, I would say July 30th through, I'm going to say, maybe a little bit wider, through maybe right around August 7th. And then as a Scorpio rising, you're going to have an eclipse that's going to be in Pisces. Now in your Placidus chart, it's more in your 4th house. So it's going to be like, is something changing at home or with your family? Maybe. But this is the last Pisces eclipse that's connected to your whole sign 5th of romance and others. So can there be a romantic opportunity or a romantic connection due to the nature of a whole sign 5th house Pisces eclipse? For sure. What's even more interesting is that it trines Mars, your chart ruler, in your 8th house, and Mars is coming into conjunction with Mercury and Venus. So I have a feeling that you're probably going to see some relationship opportunity crop up right at the end of August into, I would say, maybe the first half of September. And then to take it even a little bit further, Saturn is squaring your Venus this year. So it's a superior square. It means that maybe you feel like you can't find the one, or you don't feel lovable, or there's been some blockages in relationships, or there's been some delays. And when it squares Venus, it basically means you have to make the time for relationships. And I have told all my Scorpio risings, especially the later degree Scorpio risings, if you want to meet somebody, you need to take a class, or you need to travel, or you need to do something fitness oriented. And every single Scorpio rising who is a part of my private practice who's done that has met someone. I have another client who met somebody going to a karate studio. I have another one that started taking classes at a local college, met someone. I had another person who optimized and kind of expanded their search for online dating. 9th house, they met someone, right? So I want you to try to do some of these things. Especially, I would say, I'm going to give you a wider window, probably between now and let's say mid-November. Because then you will see in the fall of this year, Venus will turn retrograde in Scorpio. And Venus rules partners. It's going to retrograde in your 1st house, so it could be bringing somebody back to you or bring up a window of opportunity where, love can kind of happen. Obviously, during Venus retrograde, we don't assume that everything's going to stick. But if you're single under this retrograde in October and November, it can actually bring a really amazing opportunity because Venus is going to trine your moon. Venus is also going to trine your Mercury and your natal Venus. So I would really be saying October, November, taking a class, traveling, doing something where you're meeting somebody further away. That's all going to open the door to relationship harmony. And then eventually, come the spring of next year, when Saturn is no longer squaring your Venus, yeah, you're going to see that your relationships are definitely going to get a little bit better. Okay? Hopefully that's helpful for you. Although you register a lot like a Sag rising because you're such a late Scorpio, and all the eclipses and everything at the bottom of the chart look like you feel like you've been kind of isolated and kind of like homebound or not really getting out and doing a lot. So that's going to start to kind of open up here now that Jupiter's moving into your ninth. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Mandy. We've got April, and then Jacqueline, and then Nicole. All right, April, I think you're new here too. I don't think I've seen your chart before. I've got you here April 25th, 1975. So you're Cancer rising, Sun in Taurus, and your moon is in Scorpio. All right, April says, what can you tell me about my chart when it comes to my home life and business in the coming months? I'm facing some obstacles and finding a new home, and will be my golden moment to find the right place. I don't know if you've spoken to an astrologer before, but something that I would like to kind of start off with is just the sheer complexity of some of the aspects that you have in regards to your home life, because transits can definitely open the door. Like there can be, even if you have difficult configurations, you can see under certain transits, it can make it possible for you to have some of these life changes that you want to have. But the first thing that I think about is as soon as you were like, okay, I've had, issues with my home, you've got Saturn in Cancer. So Saturn represents this limitation, karma, responsibility, something revolving around your home, your family, your living situation right off the bat. And it is debilitated when it's in Cancer because it's in the opposite sign of where it likes to be, Capricorn. So you carry with you this inherent feeling of responsibility of trying to figure out where home is. Number two is your Saturn is very aspected. It does make a square to Jupiter in your 10th house, where a lot of your maybe home life or your responsibility is dictated by your career. It also comes into a square with Pluto, so there is or has been some power struggles or issues revolving around relationships or home or family. And that is just a really important thing to just kind of know. Now, there are some softening effects, right? Like a sextile to Mercury, where your home goals can be achieved. Mercury rules your home. A trine to Mars, where if you dream big about moving or relocating, it's possible. And you also see that you've got Moon and Scorpio in, Moon and Uranus in Scorpio. So my thought here is like, look, it has not been the time in recent years. You've been having eclipses here. You need to see something positive happening with your Mercury for there to be a good home change. And I feel like career is very much dominating a lot of things right now with Saturn going through your 10th house squaring Saturn. And it's almost like you have to figure out what's going to happen with work or where career is going to be, or you're choosing a job, based off of where you can get one. And then in turn, kind of making a decision about where ultimately you're going to land. This is your last quarter square to Saturn. So you're also kind of getting your butt kicked a little bit, because if you have not done some of the Saturn lessons, like figuring out a place that feels safe, or not choosing a home based off of where there's family, or in your case, Saturn, a relationship, and really prioritizing, your career, then it feels a little bit more difficult. Now, I think about in the fall of this year for Cancer rising, there's going to be a Venus retrograde where you'll have the opportunity to kind of redo or rework something about your home. Positive is that if that situation has been stuck, it can actually unstuck itself, and then, you can kind of, proceed forward. Negative is like, I wouldn't buy a house from October to mid-November. I would not sign a lease. I would try to do something temporary. I would try to see what is out there and what you like. And I'm looking at when these transits are happening in October and November, and Saturn is retrograding over your Jupiter and it's squaring your Saturn. So even then is not necessarily like the right time, basically. We need to see something good going on with your Mercury. All right, so then that period is over. And Pluto is also locked into a square with your moon. That's also why you're having issues with moving, because the moon represents your home. And I've never seen somebody go through a Pluto square where their home doesn't change. It almost always happens. And Pluto's also squaring your sun. See, it's almost like you're like, well, it's like a money thing. And then it's also like, like where is there a relationship thing? And like, I would say, pick a lane. Focus on your job. Focus on where is going to be best for you to live. Know that as soon as Pluto's no longer squaring your moon and we're out of these like retrogrades, it's going to be better. If this were me personally, I would probably recommend either, if you have to move, doing so at the beginning of December, or you wait until the Mars retrograde, which is going to rule your career in early 2027, like in January. And what you're going to see is Mars is going to retrograde, and if your job changes, it's going to dictate something about where you're living. And at least you'll have Mars and Saturn sextile. So like another window of opportunity to move or relocate would be better like in mid-April of next year, when the retrograde is over, so you don't have to move again and you see it go direct, and then there's going to be a Mars and Saturn trine, right? I'm a business owner. I left my job in 2024. Okay, my landlord wanted to sell her home after 6 years, and I have to find a place, but I feel nowhere is resonating with me yet. Well, because Mercury rules your 4th house of home, and because it's in your 11th, really close to your sun, you need to be a place where there's community. Like, you need a place where there's good food, good shopping. There's going to be some kind of outdoors related things that are aesthetically pleasing. And from what I can tell you, like, you could kick the can down the road a little bit. Like, I don't know if she's actually going to sell the house, because other people's things are going to be more kind of connected to the 8th house. Like, she may try to sell it, and it's possible it could get sold in October or November, but my guess is I'm leaning more in the direction of like February through April of next year is when it's much more likely to actually happen, you know? And I think that if you own your own business, it gives it so much, I think, more time for you to kind of figure this out, and you don't have the responsibility of having to find a job. Maybe the Mars retrograde is going to be you kind of saying, okay, you know, if I'm not kicked out of the house by the beginning of the year, maybe I am going to just do something temporary. And I've told a lot of my Cancer risings, just due to the nature of like the Venus retrograde this fall, do something temporary, put things in storage, or, you know, rent something or take over a sublease, do something kind of like tentative. So that way you can make a bigger decision about where you want to be, you know, 6 months down the road. But I don't necessarily see that you have to move right now. I think the Mars retrograde is going to go back and forth, opposing Pluto and squaring your moon. And that tells me that the bigger issue is going to be you going, well, I've found a place, but, you know, do I want to spend what I'm going to have to potentially spend for this? And, you know, do I want to spend a lot of money to pick up and move and relocate if I don't know if I'm actually going to like it? You know, and like this gets me a little bit nervous about like at least buying something. So I would 100% say do something that's going to be either a rental, or do something that's going to be flexible, and maybe commit to going and doing 6 months or doing a year somewhere. And then come, you know, April, May of next year, then you can decide where it is that you want to kind of land more so in the long term. Well, I moved out for her to prep to sell. Now I probably should have stayed. So crunch time, doing an Airbnb, stuff is in storage. Okay, so you're already in that flex space. See, the thing is like, I don't know the ins and outs of your lease and where you live and all of that stuff, but like, had I gotten you before you had made the decision to move, I would have highlighted the fact that, you know, Jupiter is going to oppose Pluto. Like, she may, I mean, I don't know what your guys' lease was, but like, you know, did she buy you out of your lease? Because, you know, if you had a leasing agreement or something, I mean, she should have. And you would have had money that would have come from that, because Jupiter was going to start squaring your Mercury. But if not, there's not much you can do about it right now. But I definitely feel like if you're looking for stability with your living situation, then we're really looking at Mercury. And once Mercury starts coming in to an aspect with Jupiter, likely you may find something that you like right around mid-August, because that's going to trine Saturn. And you might be like, okay, this is doable. Honestly, that's the best window that you're going to find, about 3 weeks from now. And then it's going to be a little rocky as you're getting into the fall. So I don't really recommend, once Venus is going into Scorpio, like I think you're going to have your best luck between, what is it? When does it go into Libra? So when it's here. So from August 6th until about September 8th, then Venus is going to retrograde, and it's going to retrograde on your moon. So it means that if you don't find a place, you're probably going to end up meeting somebody or getting involved in a relationship, 5th house, or you're going to have somebody who's going to be like, I've got a space for you. You want to come and stay with me? And you're going to be like, what? And there could be like a romantic relationship that could be kind of going on. And I'm not advocating for moving in with somebody so you have somewhere to live. I'm just telling you that that opportunity might present itself to you in October. So I would keep my eyes open, because it's right when you're kind of locked and trying to figure out what you're going to do, and you might have some kind of romantic whirlwind. And then when Venus is going to be back in Libra, it will be better as well. So you may see some opportunities to see stability again from about November 8th on. But keep it light, keep it flexible, and keep your eyes out for that Venus retrograde, because think back what happened in 2018, in the fall. You probably had a change in your living situation, and you probably either saw that it was a change for the better, or you did not do your due diligence to suss out a living situation, and then you were like, wow, this sucks. I think I've talked to a lot of Cancer risings recently who were like, oh my God, I saw this, picture of an apartment, and I packed up my car and moved across the country, and I got there and there was like cockroaches everywhere. And I was like, yep, Venus and Scorpio, dirty apartments and things that are, not entirely as good as they look. I'm in a relationship with someone who is complicating some things, and I'm good with being flexible, but he isn't. Damn, I should have reached out sooner. I mean, that Venus retrograde could change your relationship, or it could put you in a situation where it's going right over your moon and your Uranus, where you're like, we're either going to do this or not. And that's so funny. We're either going to do this or we're not. And if we're not doing this, then save me the drama, because I'm trying to figure out my living situation. So maybe that's the push that needs to happen to figure out what direction you guys are going in, What's up, Enchanted? Nice to see you. Anyway, April, I hope that's helpful. Definitely come back and let me know. I mean, I hope you find something around that mid-August period, because, yeah, the fall can get a little rocky there, babe. All right, we have Jacqueline and then Nicole. What's up, Jacqueline? All right. Hi, Candace. I had an eclipse on my birthday, and so far this last year has been hell. Yeah, it was in opposition to Saturn. That's why, babe. Any insight would be helpful. Thank you. I won't be able to watch the live tonight, but I will watch the replay. So I'm assuming you're just asking me, like, okay, you had an eclipse on your birthday last year and things have been hell. Like, what's the deal? All right, well, let's take a look. I mean, it's, astrologers, and you guys watch our videos and stuff. So like when we answer questions, we're just kind of like, oh, like we know everything, because we're constantly looking at cycles. But as soon as I saw your birthday, I didn't even really look at your question yet. I was looking at your sun. I was like, ooh, that was an interesting solar return, because you had a solar eclipse. Okay, so not only that, but it was a south node solar eclipse, which means this was going to be a whole year. It was baked into your solar return of cleaning out the house. So number one, you had that kind of working against you. It depends if it's a north node or a south node eclipse. South node eclipses definitely bring up some sense of clearing out, releasing, letting go. And as a Virgo, and that being on your sun, woof. That is like, I am releasing everything that I thought was going to bring me stability. And you're very stability focused, whether it's, food in the fridge, money in the bank, resources. Like, this is a chart that's just like, I need to know I have security. And it looks like a lot of things have been ripped out from underneath you this year that's making you completely rework and rewire the way that you look at stability. So when you have a solar eclipse on your sun, it does impact your ascendant. So that's your health, that's your appearance, that's your habits. You can feel like you've had a bit of like an ego death, or that there has been a sense of like shedding a lot of old skin. And honestly, even though it sucked, I think it's for the best for you, because it's anything that was not going to provide you stability or longevity or support, or anything that was not going to be valuable for you in the long run. It also sucked because it was squaring your moon. So on one hand, the sun in Virgo is like work, produce, consume, have security. And then the Gemini moon's like, it's like all over the place. And so there's a side of your personality that is very practical, logical, to the book. Then there's a side of you that's just like, I want freedom and I want spontaneity. And like, the Gemini moon, I swear, wants chaos. So that was going to shake everything up. And the moon rules your 12th house of your subconscious. So there was like a loss of your social groups, friends, community, feeling isolated, I would assume, has come up in this last year for you. And then you had Saturn and Neptune, which represents work, probably also enemies, relational issues and secrets, also opposing your sun. This was like the shittiest eclipse ever. I remember this eclipse because it was right on my ascendant. So I had a lot of the same effects that you had. So I feel for you. And it was creating this T-square in your chart where the moon was basically saying it had to flush everything out. So there was going to be a lot of like distorted issues with who am I versus, who am I in relationship to other people, and intimacy issues, security issues, relationship issues, friendship issues. It was just like across the board. And I don't know, I'm going to look at it from the perspective of where you were born. I'm going to pull the return chart because as astrologers, we can look at your natal chart. We don't just have to look at where you live now. And I want to see your solar return for last year to see what happened. Okay, so this is a completely different chart, obviously. You're going to have the same aspects, but it's a Taurus rising. So it's picking up some of the themes of what happened with that solar eclipse being in your second house. Pleasure, resources, stability, security, you know, all that stuff. So that tells me that Venus is going to be very important. And Venus was in the 5th house, which is not bad. So like learning to love yourself, learning to, you know, fall into hobbies or do things that are going to be creative and productive. And Venus is trining the ascendant. So that does tell me it was going to be positive for you, learning, I think, to find your own personal joy. Granted, in Virgo, not so fun. That does mean that you have to work a little bit harder, maybe, when it comes to love and romance. And it was squaring Uranus, which means, yeah, everything was going to get upended. The solar eclipse was actually taking place in your 6th. So this is like health problems, problems with pets, issues with your schedule, job loss, you know, bad habits, and all of that was opposing Saturn and Neptune in your 12th, where there was like a lot of things getting cleared out with your health and your habits, and then feeling like you need more rest and kind of recuperation and isolation. Yikes. Pluto squaring the ascendant and the descendant, and, you know, Chiron to some extent. So this is a big reevaluation of your career and how much pressure you're putting on yourself. Mars is at 29, talks about a critical turning point with relationships and health. Yuck. And you've got Jupiter that's exalted on your, you know, IC. So you had a home, a roof over your head, you had family support, you know. That's about the one thing that you had going for you in this chart. And it was trining Saturn, so it was a lot of emotional clearing. And it was sextiling your sun and your moon, where you're like, yeah, you know, everything fell apart. I spent a lot of time at home. There was some significant changes emotionally and maybe with family. But I got to tell you, you're not going to have this time around. You're not going to have this in this next year. It's not going to be the same thing. And there had to be other things going on in your chart. I'm curious, you know, what your progress chart looked like, or your solar return, your progress chart, or your annual perfection. But next year it's very different. You know, this is what it's going to look like. So you don't have that same aspect of an eclipse. You're starting to kind of, you have a trine from the sun and the moon. So it's going to be building this year rather than like the dismantling that you had. And basically, the whole chart changes because now it's going to be about the actions you're taking in relationships and whether or not you're traveling or whether or not you're moving this year. So I've had some of those solar eclipse birthdays. I remember, especially when I think it was happening when Saturn was going through Scorpio. It was a while ago, but those were some of like the most difficult years of my life. So honestly, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. This next birthday, I think, is going to be so much better. You are coming up to August here pretty soon. So that is the kind of the clear out that happens right before your birthday. So just be aware of some of these eclipses coming in. For a Virgo, these eclipses in Leo are going to be kind of psychologically clearing house in the next month. Okay. But onward and upwards with next year's birthday. All right. We've got Nicole and then Abigail. All right, Nicole, October 24th, 84 in Glendale. So she's got Aquarius rising, sun in Scorpio, moon in Scorpio. Wow, so you're going through those Pluto squares right now, huh? All right, can I get a relationship reading? So basically, you're coming out of 2 years of having had South Node eclipses going through your 7th. So even though you're in Aquarius rising, and I really want to reiterate that, you're a later degree Aquarius. So something like the Virgo and the Pisces eclipses have been happening in the axis of the self and also the relationships. And you have had over the last year, Pluto, which has been in your 12th house, has been squaring your sun. And that does create some pretty significant changes to relationships. And honestly, Pluto in the 12th house is like you going, where is all this karma coming from? Why am I having issues of isolation or separation or power struggles in relationships? Or, you know, why do people like abandon me? Or what's wrong with me? You know, because Pluto is in your ascendant sign. So it was inevitably going to either kill off or create some relational drama, basically over the better part of like the last year and a half. Positive is that the Pluto square is actually almost done. So even though Pluto is retrograde right now, it's going to get back up to about 3 degrees in October, and then it's really going to start to move away from your Sun and your Pluto. So I don't foresee some of the same heavy energies that you have had, you know, in recent years with relationships. And you're going to see a solar eclipse that's going to be in Leo in and around your 7th house in August, so on August 12th. This is a planting of new seeds while simultaneously looking at the past South Node and what did not work in previous romantic relationships. You will also find that this eclipse is going to be very interesting because it's going to create a grand fixed cross in your chart where it's going to square your South Node, which is about old, outdated ways of being out in the world, oppose your North Node of self, squaring your 4th house of home. This will set in motion basically an 18-month cycle where you're going to be focusing on, okay, am I meeting soulmates? Am I connecting with people from the past? Are there, you know, people who are meant to come into my life during this time that are going to be really prominent? And I would be keeping an eye on this period, probably when Venus is retrograding over your Sun. So you'll start to feel it in mid-September where there could be a relationship connection. And then you're going to see Venus retrograde here over your Sun right around your birthday. Actually, the Cazimi point is going to be on your Sun. So you're having a huge reset in relationships this year. It's baked into your birthday. And then you're going to see mid-November, Mars and Jupiter are going to sit on the South Node. So this can mean if you're in a relationship, you're feeling like might feel like you need to break away from someone. Or there is a sense of you being like, I have to cut something off. Or maybe somebody from the past is coming back. And like, I can already see that with the Venus retrograde over your Sun. So you're doing some kind of do-si-do back and forth with someone. And then in the beginning of next year, you will then see Mars retrograde. And it's going to be retrograde and coming back to your 7th house cusp. So there's another relationship opportunity that's happening February into March. In layman's terms, things don't get easier, basically, unless you've really learned your relationship karma. If you're really ready to stop repeating some of the same cycles, or if you're really ready to finally cut somebody off, or to create a boundary. In many ways, I think that Aquarius risings are going to be interesting characters because the North Node and the eclipses in your sign are like, it's about me, what I'm doing, what I need. While the Mars South Node transit going through your 7th is like people can come in, but you're like, I can't be attached to them, you know, or they're coming in and it's going to represent something that, you know, maybe you're dealing with people who are ego issues, or you've got people who are coming in that are being like drama, and you have to be really, really cautious about who you're kind of tying yourself to if they're potentially going to be dragging you down or weighing you down, right? And it means you're also going to be careful about who you want to partner with in a public way or in a professional way as well. So all of your relationships, I think, are going to be very much reevaluated. But I think as you're getting into the beginning of the year, and especially into the spring of next year, you know, this really starts to kind of stabilize, and Pluto's going to be moving off of that square from your Sun and your natal Pluto. Now it's coming into a square with your natal moon. And that tells me that's when there's going to be a big home change and a big decision about your living situation and a romantic partner. And likely it's going to be about a change in your domestic living situation, probably late spring, early summer of next year. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Nicole. I love all that Scorpio in your chart. So intense. All right, so we've got, let's see. That was Nicole. We've got Abigail, Stacy, and Vane. All right, Miss Abigail. She says, okay, so this is Confessions of Soul Salon. What is happening with my finances, work, career, and love life? It's a shit show. You're welcome. Well, I mean, you're going through all like the Saturn opposition stuff. Saturn opposed Saturn, Saturn opposed Sun, Saturn opposed Jupiter, Pluto. I mean, probably if this were me, the area that I would be most focused on, and I can see where you're saying like everything's kind of changing, is probably the fact that you're just recently coming out of this Mercury retrograde. So there's been a lot of reassessing and reworking something about your career and your professional direction That looks like it's been a total pain in the ass because it's been squaring Saturn, so it can be bringing up some money stuff or some issues regarding relationship communication or issues with clients. It's also been squaring your Saturn and your Sun and your Jupiter. So it's basically kind of showing you where things have to change at work, you know, or how you kind of stand up for yourself or how you take responsibility for creating boundaries between you, Libra, and others. And this is your Saturn opposition period. So if you're seeing that this is a shit show, it's a shit show only if you're not doing your Saturn work. What's working in your favor is that you have Saturn in its own, you know, kind of like exaltation. So Saturn in Libra is really good for like diplomacy and balance and obviously beauty and anything that's connected to, you know, services. And with the Sun, you probably need to be aware of some of your blind spots in relationships where on one hand, yes, you are fiercely independent, but on the other hand, with Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto, there can be some power issues that you have revolving around like letting go of control or being a part of a relationship or a partnership, and like that's part of your subconscious. Like you may not be aware of that, right? Because that's what the Sun is about. The other thing that I think about is, you know, basically when you're in this Saturn opposition, you're being given a year to really reflect on everything you've done since you were 30. And if relationships aren't going well, problems with clients are happening, you know, issues are kind of coming up at work, it's making you take a step back and be like, how much can I take on? How much is too much? You know, that's kind of the feeling that I get looking at your chart. And then Pluto's been hovering around your moon, and that is like the emotional shit show. And it can be in your love life, but it can also be connected to changes that inevitably have to happen within your career or your daily routines, or even like your office space or your salon space that you're kind of working in. Uranus and Mars have been in your 10th house too, so that's like the chaos with work, you know? I'm a solo mom since I was 30, so not surprised by that. Saturn represents children. You've got Moon South Node, so it does kind of represent where you're like, okay, I'm doing, you know, kids on my own. But I'd be really focusing on the fact that Pluto's retrograding back towards your moon. That means that there needs to be a significant shift in the way that you look at your love life, the way that you create, the way that you run your own business. And also, now that you're coming out of the Mercury retrograde, it can be a sense of you really reassessing and reevaluating what your goals are when it comes to your home, your friends, and your family. And the pressure that's been put on you and relationships recently, I think, has been for good reason. It's trying to get you to kind of recognize what needs to change at work, so that way you're in better harmony with yourself and also simultaneously better harmony, you know, with your relationships. You got another eclipse coming at the end of next month in your 7th house, so that's going to be more relational. And Libra season is going to be really good in a way. It's almost going to be like a power up for you. Like Venus is going to go through there in August, and you're going to see the Sun and Mercury go through there in September. And I think, unfortunately, you know, a lot of this Libra energy is going to have to tell people what's up. It's going to be like, nope, I can't do this anymore, sorry, or I'm not available, or, you know, I am having to take a step back. And that's all trining into your 5th house. Why? To prioritize joy, to take better care of your kid, to, you know, be more heart-centered. And like, you're going to have to get comfortable with telling people no. And I would say get ready for that, because that's part of what's going to be coming for you in September, where there's going to be a pretty significant kind of like slowdown in a way. But I'm optimistic that if you're doing this all the way up until the fall, then that whole reorientation that's going to happen, you know, with your resources and also with yourself is going to naturally happen as you're kind of getting into October and November of this year. But my goodness, Virgo rising and Libra sun in combination, you've been really kind of going through it, I think, with the eclipses and also with some of the Saturn retrograde. You'll see with like Saturn and Neptune in your 7th house that there are some people that are just like lost, draining you, deceiving you, not taking accountability, not showing up the way they need to show up. And it's going to teach you how to do relationships differently. And rather than feeling like you need to be longing to kind of help people or to fix people, you're learning to kind of pull that energy back into yourself, right? So hopefully that's helpful for you, Abigail. Definitely some really interesting transits, but I'm confident you're going to kind of get your groove back here soon. All right, we've got Stacy and then Vane. And so Stacy's got Sinistry here. So she's the Aries rising, Sun in Capricorn, Moon in Libra. And then the ex-partner is the Leo rising, sun in Gemini, moon in Sag. And she says, let's see, I pull my little note up here. Now ex at the moment, we're on again, off again, can't stay away from each other, but he's going through a divorce and financial separation, is heartbroken over not seeing his kids. He has some mental health and substance abuse things going on, and I've been trying to help him get through it even though we aren't together. He came into my life when Pluto hit my Venus. He broke up with me out of nowhere in a bit of a bipolar manic stage when Juno went retrograde on Pluto, on your Venus. I don't know what my question is, but what do you see here? I'm just dreaming that this will come back and he will get better. It's really hard to care about someone going through so much, and by proxy, I've been going through it too. All right. I'm going to tell you that whatever has been going on is a direct connection and correlation to Pluto on your Venus. This is all textbook Pluto-Venus transits, especially in Aquarius. Somebody going through a divorce, you know, all of this happening in your 10th house is connected to like them having to go through changes on their own at home or in regards to their family or their living situation. And I would be thinking about two particular cycles personally that's going to be prominent. One, you're going to have the solar eclipse in your 5th house, which means you may have to release something romantic because it's wearing too much on your heart, right? And that solar eclipse is going to be in a trine to Saturn. So you have to do it for you so you can create that boundary and feel better and like heal. And it will also sextile everything in your 7th house. So you create a boundary and you kind of say to them, you got to go and take care of you. You got to do what you got to do. That eclipse will get reactivated. So you'll see in November, you know, Mars is going to hit it. So it can represent whether or not you're still struggling to let somebody go, or if somebody comes back to you, or if you're feeling tempted to go back to them. And then also something you're going to see in October into November is Venus, your 7th house relationship ruler, will retrograde over your Jupiter. So that's going to be about somebody who's been healing. Over your moon, so they're going to ask if they can come see you or visit. Over your Pluto, so it's going to get like sexual or intimate. And then over your Saturn, and you're going to have to basically be like, wait, are you coming back physically, but like not really ready? And what you'll find is like that retrograde is going to be squaring Mars and it's going to be squaring Pluto, which means you can't just call it a friendship. And like things actually have to be done. And like he may be coming back in a renewed state, right? Retrograde. But it can also mean that he's coming back in a physical sense, but he hasn't done the work yet. Now, that Mars retrograde will then come back again. And you will see when it comes back into conjunction with Jupiter, it's much more likely to be stable, you know, March, April on of next year. For him, I would say, you know, the issue that I have, let's pull up his chart, is that he's quite literally the epitome of like the Mars retrograde in Leo, right? And look at, he's a Leo rising. So where there's Pluto and eclipses and things in his chart, which is saying inevitably a relationship has to end, it has to change, the divorce, it is happening to bring something else in. And I personally think his relationships are going to be much better like from mid-February next year on. When he has a solar eclipse, when he has a retrograde here, you know, when he's done working through the selfishness or the self-undoing or the breakdown of the South Node in his 1st house, it'll be better. Also, you know, Saturn and Uranus rule his 7th. So, you know, he's got Chiron in opposition to Uranus, so he wounds other people and he keeps other people apart. He's also got Pluto right now that's squaring his Venus. So it's like one marriage has to die off for another relationship to come in that I think is going to be a much better relationship. It was inevitable he was going to get divorced. I mean, at least in my opinion. You know, if you look at his Uranus in opposition to Chiron, they were going to have value issues, financial issues, you name it. And I think that the marriage getting killed off is making space for the next real commitment. And like, this guy's going to get married again when probably Saturn comes into conjunction with Venus in about 2 years. Or engaged. I think he will, to somebody who's younger, you know. And you have to look at the composite chart to see what's happening with the composite. The synastry is not going to tell you anything because it's just a, you know, like a flat, you know, kind of like not moving, you know, kind of transit. This is what you want to look at. Gemini rising, Sun in Aries, you guys have Moon in Scorpio. So the Mercury retrograde and the Venus retrograde is going to be kind of going right through here, mostly the Mercury retrograde. And Saturn and Neptune are sitting on your Sun. which means you guys have been going through intermittent periods of not talking throughout this last year and somebody having to be more independent, taking accountability for their shit. So probably what you want to watch is when Mercury retrogrades in Scorpio. It's going to go right over your moon. And I think the question is going to be, are you sober? You know, are you taking care of yourself? Are you handling things? Because if you're not, I don't think this is healthy, because I don't want to get into the habit of like, you know, being your therapist because like I'm grieving, like losing you too type of stuff. And then you will probably find when there is a strong transit involving Jupiter, relationship stuff will get better. So like the Mars retrograde coming into conjunction with Jupiter, trining Saturn. And then still for the next year in 2027, you know, Neptune's going to sit on your sun, which means somebody might be in and out of the relationship. They might be having depression issues, drug issues. You know, we can't lose ourselves in other people's problems is still the lesson into 2027. And you will start to see next year, you know, Jupiter is going to start going into Virgo, and then it's going to start trining your guys' natal Jupiter. Still squaring Neptune and opposing Venus and squaring Uranus tells me that if he can't get it together by next fall, it's going to be a little bit harder for you to kind of stay online with some of this stuff, you know? I'd be most concerned about Neptune hitting your composite sun and south node. And if he's so sad about his kids that he's drinking and he's using and he's not taking care of himself, then you can only do so much. And it's at a 5, so it's about somebody having a broken heart. Watch for opportunities for you to talk about, you know, healthy habits and, you know, checking in on him in the fall. But the addiction issues, the depression issues, the isolation, you know, that's still going to be something that's going to be kind of lingering, I think, clear into next year. Now, can it get better? Yeah. But if you look at your composite chart, you have Venus square Neptune. So there can be a sense of idealizing each other, or like, you know, those themes of like addiction, or somebody who's, you know, losing themselves to something is a huge theme. And I would say, just to give it a hard timeline, this isn't worked out by next spring when Mars is retrograding, because Mars is habits over, you know, Mars and Saturn. I would be like, this isn't good, because you might notice he only comes back when he's like really struggling. And then he gets better, and then you're like, okay, we go back to not talking. And you're like, does he just come back to me when he needs like a hit? You know? He actually stops doing those things when he's the most sad. Good. So he uses substances, buys self-medicine for ADHD, etc. Yeah, I mean, a lot of early, and he's not even that early, but like a lot of like Geminis are just like really going through it. I think with like the incoming eclipses, which is going to be in mutable signs, obviously also with Uranus now being in Gemini, and Saturn, which rules habits, you know, is coming into a square with his natal Saturn. So what he needs is like, he needs a guru, a teacher, a mentor, a spiritual course, a study, some kind of practice or physical practice that's going to help him. And because he's got Sun in opposition to the Moon, and also Moon conjunct Neptune, some kind of addiction runs in his family. It could be his mother's side. And it can mean that he doesn't always feel like he knows what to do with all of his emotions. And, you know, I think that I would start there, that there may be something that's kind of, you know, inherited. And if he doesn't feel like everything is like kosher, you know, at home, the square to Neptune and the opposition to the Sun basically means that he'll have a tendency to fall into substances. The relationship stuff's really coming to a head. That's going to happen around the eclipse, and it still can with the other full moon that's going to be happening for him too at the end of this month. You know, somebody's going to basically be like, you need to go and work on yourself. And that may come up several times throughout some of the retrogrades. Hopefully that's helpful for you. All right, let's see. And then I think we have another person here still. Stacy, Vane. Thank you for your patience, Vane. Let's take a look. You're welcome. All right, let's see what Vane has to say. What's up? All right, Vane, I have you here August 13th, 1992, and that was at 3:15 in Chile. And you are a Capricorn rising, you got Sun in Leo, you've got Moon in Aquarius. Wow, so you're feeling these eclipses, my dude. All right, my close family passed away and then got into an inheritance issue with my relatives. I'm hurt by what they did, so I left the country. I'm abroad now, and more than a year. I don't have the resources to fight them, but feeling it's time to address it. Vane, I'm sorry to hear that. I have to tell you, the astrology in your chart is like literally like textbook, okay? So I don't know if you've ever had an astrology reading before, but let me show you what I'm talking about. So back in February of this year, you had a solar eclipse that was right on your moon. And it represented that there is about to be a pretty significant, dramatic situation involving the death of a family member. I don't know if that's when it was really coming to a head or it happened earlier, but the death of a family member is the moon, and then the solar eclipse is the shock, and it was right on top of your moon, which brought up things connected to female relatives, property, money, and that was squaring Uranus, which means it kind of made you feel like, oh my gosh, everybody was like out for themselves and everybody was just trying to get whatever they can get. And it opposed your sun and your Chiron, which was going to bring up some kind of healing revolving around grief and loss. And then also you being like, why are people arguing over all of this stuff and taking stuff? And I would argue, just looking at the transits, that this was hinting at the fact that something should have been given to you, or you should have received something. So I don't know if you did, or maybe you just threw your hands up in the air and you just said, you know what, this is disgusting. I don't want to deal with this. I'm walking away. But like the astrology says, you should have had something. Now, with that being said, the South Node was hitting your Venus. So with that transit, taking place, there was also going to be a sense of you going, I don't have the resources to pay for an attorney or to fight people or to go back and forth with them. And it represented some kind of a loss. All right. Now we fast forward to the eclipse that we're about to have next month, which by the way is going to be right around your birthday. So happy birthday, solar eclipse to you. This is now saying you're ready to go back, South Node, take some action, solar eclipse, address, issues with resources and other people's money and the shadow side of things, and confront through the opposition to the moon and Saturn, your family. Here's the positive. Jupiter and Mercury is there, so it's about speaking your piece and speaking your truth. Other people may not agree with you and they may not like it, and there could definitely be some conflict and some squabbles with some family members who are going to be like, it's none of your business, or you don't know what happened, or you don't know what they agreed to, and they may argue with you about documents, number one. Number two is that this will trine Saturn. So it means that it can finally, get to the bottom of this issue where everybody's been kind of maybe, having some power struggles over who gets what. And that square to Pluto is about, a group of people. It's not just one particular person. There's multiple people involved here. And that eclipse is going to be a point where Jupiter is going to hit it. And then also you're going to see there's going to be a Mars retrograde through there. So I feel with like the Jupiter conjunction, there may be other people who pass in this next year. I don't like telling you that, but it's possible. I mean, the eclipse is in your 8th house. It could also mean that there is some kind of lucky break where suddenly you have some support, or somebody decides to say, hey, I will, if you do want a lawyer, work for you or work in your behalf if you feel entitled to something, or they might work pro bono. This could also be where there is some kind of like blessing where the universe or your ancestors are coming in saying, hey, no, we want them to have something. And so you could have a lucky break. You could make money. You could inherit something. You could have some kind of windfall. And I'm not just telling you that. That could happen. And then finally, you're going to see that Saturn and Jupiter are going to trine. So it means that maybe somebody is willing to be generous with you sometime from September into November. And they may feel bad when you say something, and they may give you something to help you. Not necessarily that you need it, but if you're looking for a place to stay, or if you're trying to get set up with a living situation, or you're trying to find an apartment, find a home, something like that, Jupiter trine Saturn means that it could actually help you while you're in a foreign land. So you could address it, and then somebody might sit with it for a while and be like, okay, we feel bad, should we apologize, or should we all kind of clean up our act, or, should we be supporting him, or, giving him something? I could see that happening. And then you're going to see another wave of it too, when Mars and Jupiter hit in mid-November. And then when Mars retrogrades over your Venus, there's a possibility that you actually come back home, right? Because this is about returning back home in early January, or you decide to talk to a lawyer about the family estate and determine whether or not you're owed something.
And that's going to be debated under the retrogrades and the eclipses in February of 2027, when you have a solar eclipse and a retrograde here, where they may argue, but you may have reason to believe that something is yours, especially if it's gold, jewelry, if it's art, if it's land, if it's property. And then Jupiter and Mars are going to trine Saturn, which means it would help you stabilize your living situation come the spring. Certainly the family drama is also going to be kind of settled as you're getting closer to the spring. But I'm going to tell you something. You were born with the Sun and Chiron in the 8th house, which represents people die, they pass, there's pain, there's an issue that comes up with other people's resources, but you're more kind of like, man, that person, you know, had a special place in my heart. And it opposes Saturn and the moon in your 6th house, which represents conflict with family and having to confront them about arguing about resources. And this really grinds your gears. You're just kind of like, you don't like it when people aren't generous. You don't like it when people don't consider the family and that person and who they were. And you also probably don't like the fact that you also get kind of left holding the bag. You know, Saturn and the moon might mean that you don't feel like people consider you, or they're not generous, or they're not giving to you. I don't think that's the first thing that you think about, but you know what I'm saying. So it's all coming to a head. And you're going to see that in August. You're going to see it during the times that I mentioned. And you're also going to see it start to kind of wrap up as you're getting into February of next year. And what you're going to learn is that there are certain family members that you have to keep at a safe distance, you know. So hopefully that's helpful for you. And gives you a little bit of insight in terms of the timing and what's kind of coming. And for all of you guys who are watching the live tonight, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Make sure you click the bell button if you want to see more of these videos. We'll be back next week with live tarot. And definitely subscribe so you guys can see the Sunday video. If you guys are members, you can already catch that. That's going to be available on the channel now if you want to go and watch it. And I will see you guys here on Sunday for the astro weather. For more about me and my work, or if you guys want to learn tarot or astrology, click the links below and head over to the website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. Until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you guys all very soon. Take care.